What are my top 10 favorite dwarf tarantulas? Keep watching and I'll tell you. Welcome to the Tarantula Collective. My name is Richard, and if you enjoy videos like this, make sure you hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe and turn on all notifications. That way you don't miss any content in the future. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I am a big fan of dwarf tarantulas. And when I say dwarf tarantula, I mean any tarantula that's like 3.5, maybe 4 inches or smaller when they're full grown. Typically, we're talking about tarantulas that only get to about 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 inches at most. But there are some tarantulas in the hobby that have a common name where they use the word dwarf and they do grow like more than 3 inches. So it's kind of like in that general area. They're tarantulas that are on the smaller of the size spectrum. So we're quickly going to count down my top 10 favorite species, starting with number 10. But before we begin, I want you to leave a comment down below this video and tell me what you think the number 1 dwarf tarantula should be. And then at the end of the video, leave another comment and let me know if you were right. So I'm going to start this list off with a tarantula that's new to the hobby. This species comes out of Brazil and is surrounded with controversy. I'm actually going to be making a video this Thursday discussing this species in particular and all the legality issues around it. But it's a beautiful arboreal dwarf tarantula. Of course, for number 10, I'm talking about the T. SELADONIA, or the Brazilian jewel tarantula. Now, number 9 is an old world baboon dwarf tarantula that comes from Tanzania and grows to about a max size around 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters. They do like to burrow a lot, but will also web up their enclosure quite a bit. I used to have one in my collection, but it matured out male about 6 to 9 months ago, and species I'm talking about is the HETEROTHELE VILLOSELLA, or the Tanzanian chestnut baboon. Now, number 8 is a heavy webbing dwarf tarantula that grows to about 3 inches in size. It hails from Trinidad and Tobago and has a beautiful bumblebee type look to it. With those golds and blacks or like dark browns, it's a beautiful tarantula. There's even some people that suggest you can keep these tarantulas communally, though that's not 100% accurate, as some people who have attempted this have seen some cannibalism. Personally, I wouldn't try it, but there are people out there that are doing it as we speak, and some of them have been very successful. So the species in the number 8 slot is the NEOHOLOTHELE INCEI, or the Trinidad olive tarantula. Now, number 7 is one of my favorite tarantulas of all time. It only grows to about 2 inches in size, which is nice if you got a lot of tarantulas like this. They don't take up much room, but they've got a great personality, gorgeous colorations, a very identifiable pattern on their abdomen. I like to call them the love bug because they've got a nice pink heart on them, and they're endemic to Trinidad and Tobago as well as Venezuela. Of course, I'm talking about the CYRICOSMUS elegans, or the Trinidad dwarf tarantula. Now number 6 is a species I suggest to a lot of people because they don't get much love shown to them in the hobby. They're on the larger side of the dwarf scale, coming in at about 3 to 3.5 inches, and have recently gone through a taxonomic name change. This New World terrestrial dwarf tarantula is definitely a hit on my list. Initially they were called the Ommi species Panama, but now they're known as the Neischnocolus species Panama, or the gold-banded Sunburst dwarf tarantula. Well, hey Nola.
Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm flying!
Yeah. I was gonna tell him. I was getting to it. Yes, I was getting to it. I know.
Oh, really?
Are you directing this video now? I don't need your help.
Run it up.
I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing.
Good gravy.
Yes, I was gonna tell him all about Micro Wilderness.
Yes.
Yes, they are an online tarantula dealer here in the US that also sells scorpions and geckos and all other kinds of amazing stuff. Right. I know. They're sponsoring today's video, so a huge shout out to Nate and the gang over at Micro Wilderness. I'll leave a link down below in the description if you want to check them out, and I'll also put the code right here on screen where you can get 10% off your orders. Now, this is only available to people that live in the US as they don't ship internationally. All right, Nola. Well, thank you very much for your help. I appreciate you reminding me that I needed to mention that. So if you want to support this channel, then support Micro Wilderness. Nate's a great guy. He's got a great selection, and he supports the Tarantula Collective, so he's good in my book. All right, can we get back to the list now, please?
Yes.
All right, is that good?
Please.
All right, thank you. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, your collection is not complete without this next species. Starting off the top 5 of this list is a species that's endemic to Guatemala. Females grow to an average size of around 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters. So they're right on that border of being a dwarf. But they have this red and black coloration and this tiger pattern on their abdomen. They are a beautiful tarantula, and I just can't speak highly enough about them. So number 5 is the DAVUS Pentaloris, known commonly as the Guatemalan tiger rump. Number 4 is definitely a spooky tarantula. This dwarf species comes from the island of Colombia, and it is very popular in the hobby. With a unique coloration and pattern, they're among some of my favorite species of all time. I like to keep mine semi-arboreal, much like a GBB or even how I kind of keep my OBTs. They will burrow some as slings and even as adults, but they will also web up their entire enclosure. And if you're a fan of the channel back this past Halloween, you already know what I'm talking about because you saw the video. But number 4 is a HAPOLOPUS species Colombia, or the pumpkin patch tarantula. Now number 3 is probably one of the most sought after tarantulas in the hobby. Not because it's really all that rare or extremely beautiful like the T. SELADONIA, but because it's such a slow grower and it just takes a lot of time for them to be bred and introduced in the hobby and just available for sale. So if you have one in your collection, consider yourself very lucky. And if you'll want to add one to your collection, I'm just going to wish you good luck. I hope you find one. The species is kind of large for a dwarf tarantula, coming in at about 4 inches, but many people do refer to or consider them a dwarf tarantula, and they're just an awesome species. They're very docile and very inquisitive, so I had to include them. Now I'm talking about the HOMOEOMMA chilensis, or the Chilean flame dwarf tarantula. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you leave your guess for the number 1 species on this list down below in the comments. I'll be revealing what it is very soon. So the number 2 species is actually a tarantula that I covered recently here on Tarantula Tuesday. And I think at the time I posited the question, is this the best dwarf tarantula? It ranks way up there with the green bottle blue in my opinion, and it's stunningly beautiful, probably among some of the most beautiful tarantulas in the world. The only reason I think it's not more popular in the hobby is the fact that it is a dwarf species. People want that beauty and that large size. But as far as dwarfs are concerned, this is a large species. It grows to about 3 to 4 inches max size and is endemic to Brazil. Now I'm talking about the DOLICHOTHELE diamantinensis, or the Brazilian blue dwarf tarantula. Now it's time for the number 1 dwarf species on my list. I always enjoy doing these videos because people get so upset if I don't include their favorite species in the list. And it's awesome to be reminded about species that maybe have slipped my mind or I just haven't given much credit to. And people will leave comments down below these videos and give me all the reasons that they really enjoy their pick for number 1. And it really helps kind of reignite that passion for that particular species, at least for me. So I look forward to reading your all's comments and see what you picked for number 1. But as far as I'm concerned right now, while I was writing this list, my favorite species comes from Bolivia and doesn't get larger than about 2 inches. If you've been a fan of this channel for a while or have at least watched a lot of my previous videos, I sing praises for this species all the time. I've got a few of them in my collection right now, and hopefully one day I'll even be able to breed some. But when it comes to dwarf tarantulas, this one truly is a dwarf and is exceptionally amazing. In fact, this whole genus is awesome. I would suggest any tarantula in this genus. In fact, I already have once in this list. This is the only genus to make the list twice, so the number 1 tarantula on this list is the CYRICOSMUS rite, or the Peruvian black and white dwarf tarantula. Well, as always, don't quote me on the pronunciation of any of these species. More often than not, I'm screwing it up. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to hearing what your picks for the #1 species were. Well, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more content. Thanks for buying Tarantula Collective merchandise, and I will see you next Tuesday. I just hit the button now. I want to do a few honorable mentions. These are dwarf species that for one reason or another just didn't make my list. So the first honorable mention is going to go to the Coquiana brunepes, or the dwarf pink-legged tarantula. This species is endemic to Brazil, grows to about 2 inches, and is an awesome terrestrial tarantula that I highly suggest anyone have in their collection. Now the second honorable mention for this list is a species that comes out of Trinidad, grows to about 3.5 inches, and is very beautiful. It's got these really cool iridescent legs, and I've always been a big fan of this species. I'm talking about the HOLOTHELE longipes, or the Trinidad pink tarantula. Hey, just based on my honorable mentions, it kind of looks like I just don't like the color pink. Maybe that's it, I don't know.